Isn't this cool? Hey, all right, we're doing a show. My name is Chris Fenwick. This is extra hours. And Grant, we're sorry you're not here. We have assembled a panel of folks from literally around the world, although our Brit is right here in California. Carl, tell us who you are and where you're from.
So my name's Carl. I'm from Adelaide, which is at the bottom centre part of Australia, next thing south is Antarctica.
And apparently in Adelaide, everybody uses 2110. Guy, introduce yourself.
Yeah, a guy coming in from Seattle, Washington, where I'm just north of Leo. It feels like we're that much closer. Leo popped in as a surprise guest at the last minute from Monterey, and I'm wishing that I was down there getting the Idelson compound treatment, because it's always a joy to visit the compound. So
Guy spoiling the surprise. Leo is visiting California. Leo, tell us the one sentence version of your trip so far.
So far, San Francisco to Monterey, a 40+ kilometer bike ride over the Golden Gate Bridge and and then down now to Monterey, and been to the various different things in the cannery today.
Did you go to the aquarium?
I was at the aquarium and saw the sea otters. Yeah, that was great.
The sea otters are a favorite there, aren't they?
They are. 3,000 left, I think.
Is that true? They're endangered?
3,000. That's all there is. There's only 3,000.
I wonder why they stopped counting. Weird. Peter Sargent, where are you from?
I'm currently sitting in my house in Round Rock, Texas, which is sort of like Adelaide, the bottom center of the U.S. And getting ready to do another show tomorrow night for the Coast Guard Auxiliary.
And Courtney coming in from Hollywood. How's Hollywood doing?
The former center of film and television production, now a ghost town. We're doing just fine.
So true.
Yeah. I'm keeping the door open in case they come back. Doing fine. It's a beautiful sunny day here in Hollywood.
Mickey is telling me my Discord dings are going to the show. Question. I'm going to go off script here for a second. Courtney, at the beginning of the show, you mentioned the time of day. During the typical morning show, you have a lot of light coming in through your window. You've lit yourself differently tonight. Can we put Courtney up? I want to talk about, I'll tell you, it's striking. Explain what happened and why you look better tonight than you have on other evenings.
Well, this is only a theory, but on the night shows, we use a different method of transmission for office hours. We're using Mimo Live, so it's doing the encoding. And my camera, which was recommended by Carl, I'll have Carl know, was the Canon M50 Mark II. During the day shows, the sun is coming through this window that's right next to me. You can see the back one back there. And I just use this panel light that is now illuminating my face as a fill light. So there's usually plenty of light in the mornings. But on the nighttime shows, which I've been on a couple lately, the sun isn't blasting me in the face, and I was leaving my panel light at the same 20% setting that I use it for a fill light. And as a result, the ISO on my camera was kicking up, unbeknownst to me, to like 1200 to 2400. Creating a bunch of noise in the background. And that noise was driving the compression engine on the encoder on Mimo crazy, supposedly, which was causing the stream to stutter and stop and get slow. So even though I have, I have a gigabit upload speed, so I know it wasn't my connection speed, but apparently it was the noise in the background that was, this is all theory on Mickey's behalf after troubleshooting. That's what they think was a problem. But now that I have cranked my panel light up to 50%, we have a lot more light going, and hopefully the ISO on the camera has dropped back down to the 400 to 500 range.
Yeah.
And so we'll help the noise be less, and will create less stress on the encode.
I know that by and large, the people involved in this show are very advanced, very technical, very well steeped in technology. But not all of us were. And I will tell you, even at the beginning of the COVID, I did not fully appreciate how much different lighting for a webcam made a difference. Like I on paper, I understand it, but I didn't appreciate, like, oh my goodness, that is such a big difference, because it's so easy to, you plug in a webcam or you open up your laptop or your iMac, whatever, and you see, oh, that picture looks pretty good, but it's not. And more light is almost always better. So I think that's a lot of what we're seeing. And if I'm hearing you right, Courtney, just the general noisiness of the video noise of the background meant that when it comes to spatial compression, not temporal compression, but spatial compression, every pixel on your shot was changing with every frame.
That would be temporal compression.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess so.
Intra frame, can deal with it. Interframe.
You're right. Temporal, you're totally right. So temporal time, over time, every frame is changed. Every pixel is changing with every frame. Much the same problem that you have if you like set up your phone, looking out the front window at, to stream something while you're driving. Every pixel is changing and it doesn't look very good. So,
and also to combat the compression problems, I wore my macro block shirt that is divided into large macro blocks already. So the encoder doesn't have to work as hard because my shirt is already divided into macro blocks rather than a fine.
I thought that was a solid color shirt. No. Okay,
yep,
so
that's all Carl, macro.
And let me think. I got to Carl, got to Peter. Okay, we've introduced everybody. Enough of that nonsense. Courtney, why don't you read our heavily weighted and completely controversial first question that Carl is going to lecture on us for the next hour. Carl, if I cut you off, please stop talking. Go ahead, Carl.
All right.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Coming in from Montreal, Canada, Nietzsche asks, I love the idea of 2110. I tried the Blackmagic's 3x3 IP converter 2110 on one of our shows a few months ago to carry 3 PTZ signals using just one 200-foot Cat6 cable and was wowed. This is the future, but it's not standardized like NDI yet, making it harder to set up. And was there a question in there? I don't think so. I think it was
Carl,
a statement.
Please include imagery and slides that include the Blackmagic 3x3 IP converter. I want to know its prices on both of our continents and everything at all about it.
Including tariff.
All right, so I'll first go directly to the question, especially the last part of the question. You say, but it's not a standardized like NDI. So the opposite is true. NDI is proprietary. It's not a standard. And 2110, especially the 3x3. So the 3x3 does 3G. That's its maximum capacity it can handle is 3G. And it does that's why it's called 3x3. It does 3G signals bidirectionally, which is great. So those 3Gs are 2110-20. They are uncompressed. They can be seen by Sony equipment, Ross equipment, doesn't matter what equipment. So they are just standard, uncompressed 2110-20. So that is literally standardized, and it's literally written in this empty documentation as standardized because it's uncompressed. Well, it's uncompressed 10-bit 422. So that's I should say that as well. That's the format it's being, which is the same as SDI, by the way. Now that is a great device. It's a great device now that Blackmagic now has a lot of other equipment out. Because the 3x3 can also, as you said, you're putting 3 PTZ cameras, and you can just have 2 3x3 boxes and have a single cable, essentially a bridge, using them as a bridge to have a single long run cable. And you can have that cable run very long, of course. Up to 10G would be up to around 300 feet with 10G copper. And then, of course, you can go into fiber and other things. I won't get into that, though. So the interesting thing is you don't have to have it pop out at another 3x3. You can now just chuck it into, let's say, Blackmagic's IP switcher. So it will just see three 3G signals as sources now, because it can just subscribe to those three signals via SDI. Another really important way where you say with not like NDI, now this card apparently is in limited supply, and this is a 100G decklink card. So if you have a 100G decklink card inside of a current Mac Pro, or the way they show it, the way Blackmagic showed it at NAB was in a Sonnet box connected to a Mac Studio, then you could actually just treat it like how you treat NDI now. So you could just have the cameras going into a box, the 3x3 box, and then that 10G cable can be plugged into a switch, and then that switch can be plugged into the 100 gig decklink card, and there you'll just see show up on your Mac Pro, whatever Mac can handle that card, which is pretty much right down to a Mac Mini, I'm guessing. You'll be able to subscribe to those 2110 streams in anything, because the decklink software inside the Mac will actually pass that out to Mimo Live, pass it out to anything else, or probably even you could even subscribe to it in Zoom if you have the right software, so you could just use it as a webcam. You could subscribe to one of them in Zoom. So it's the standardization of 2110 is its really cool feature, and the distributed routing is another really cool feature. As you said, you can bring in three cameras into one, and that's distributed routing, because you're routing three cameras to one cable and then sending it off. I'm guessing when you said you were using it as a 3x3 into another 3x3 at the other end, and taking those SDI outs and going into SDI world again, which is really an excellent transport bridge. So that's essentially like a digital snake for SDI in a way, even though SDI is digital, of course. Now the other thing is with NDI.
Before you move on, question: how much by putting into the three feeds into one 3x3, running the Ethernet Cat6, breaking it out in another 3x3, how many frames of delay, or how much delay are we introducing into the system?
So that when the device hit the public at first, people were doing this to see if they could use it for an iMag, and it's about one frame if you're running at 60. So if you're running at 1080 60, so if you're running 3G, it's about one frame delay. So they did do a check. It can be more if you're going through. That's point to point. So that's where you have the copper. So the two 3G boxes connected by a single cable. If you're going through a switch, in theory, it could be longer depending on the switch you're going through to a 10 gig switch, because it's not real time and there are slower delayed. But you remember the switching fabric has to actually do the switch, so it can be up to 2 frames I've seen. But then you also have the problem of the delay could be going into your ATEM or whatever you're going into. And so this is when this person did this test with this iMag setup, they had to think of the different scenarios, because your switcher itself has resyncing on all the inputs. So because it has resyncing, it can add up to 2 frames again on the switcher. So you need to remember that you have to look at the entire piece of the puzzle. But the delay they found on the actual switcher was about 1 frame, or about 10 milliseconds, which was 16 milliseconds is actually 1 frame, but it was around 10 to 15 milliseconds delay for the 3x3 for coming in, converted, going through the copper, coming out, converted back to SDI, and coming out the other end. And simply because they were filming the same screen. So they had one camera filming the camera and the other camera, so they essentially just daisy chain cameras together to see.
Sure.
One camera would see both inputs simultaneously. And so essentially all they were seeing was a delay through the entire system rather than a delay you like to report. But for iMag 1 frame, that may not be a problem, and it's also lightweight. It's only 3G as well. So remember, it's a relatively lightweight stream. Now, they were only testing 1 stream in this test, so they weren't putting in 3 separate sources. So that's yet we had to be seen, but my guess is it's 3 separate sources anyway, so it's not going to be a problem. It'll still be the same delay. But they were only putting in 1 3G source in and 1 3G source out. So that test, so you essentially with all Blackmagic equipment, actually with all broadcast equipment, you want to test for your scenario, and
Sure.
that's what we do. That's what we do when we're not working a gig. We're testing our equipment to see what our equipment can do for another gig.
Carl, I promise I'll come back to you because I know you have so much more to say. Courtney, what's your take on this device?
Yeah, in fact, I was going to ask Carl to elaborate on this. This question talks about 3 PTZs, and if you're going from, I'm not sure exactly if I understand how the setup is. Are the PTZs being controlled How are the control signals to the pan, tilt, and zoom working for the 3 independent PTZ cameras if they're coming over SDI? Is there a return
Because
SDI
it's bidirectional
that has control
SDI.
signals?
It's
Right.
bidirectional SDI. So it's
Okay.
SDI in, SDI out. So if your control is done via SDI, like Blackmagic, for instance, they send their control signals via SDI. Then you can send the control
two
signals up the other
SDI
way.
cables, two
So
RG
the camera would have a 2 SDI,
cables.
just like all Blackmagic cameras that do SDI
Right.
via control. They have SDI in, SDI out, and because the SDI into the camera is the control signal as well as program return for some cameras. So
it's not
so that's
saving
not a
them
problem. So
on cabling. It's not saying they got double the cabling, so it's not saving them any on cabling for that Cat 6 for the 3. I
yeah, but they
guess
can
if
do
they
short.
put the converter on the far end close to the cameras, then they can run shorter SDI cameras to the converter.
That's right.
And then the converter to Cat 6 back to the
It also means you can use a multi-room setup.
box.
So if you're in a building that already has, let's say, a 10 gig network built into the walls, it means you can plug those SDI cameras into a box and then plug that box into a wall, and then those signals can come out in any other room that's on the same network. So you can have your master control in a completely different room rather than in the back of the room or in the room outside running the cables through the door. So this is what we call distributed routing, which is one of the major features for 2110.
Okay, and if you're using 2110 on a 10 gig network, does it have to be a managed switch?
It has to be a switch. So this is Blackmagic has their own switch, and I would strongly suggest Blackmagic switch is pretty cool. Thumbs up. But it does have to be a switch that supports at least PTP transparency. So these are the switches. So we can see that the M4350s from Netgear, Ubiquiti have just released a new EAV series. So these switches all support the protocol that's required, which is PTP version 2.
Okay, before we get too deep into the show, I'm going to also do another audible. Anybody who's listening, our friend Leo is here from, as I mentioned, from England, doing a little bit of a road trip through California. If anybody has must-see things for Leo to see between Monterey, Joshua Tree, believe it or not, coming back and then going to San Diego, anything to see in the next couple of days, put it in the form of a question. We'll jeopardy it over to Leo, and we want to have his visit in the state be the very best it can be. Carl, is there anything else you want to say about 2110?
So we have some 2110 questions coming up later on as well. So we'll leave until then.
Let's go to the next question then.
So
Courtney?
stay tuned, folks. Richard Wells in Tacoma, Washington asks, preferred live stream platforms for bands or concerts, figuring not Twitch or AWS, likely not Zoom. Open to input. Goal is for a single static camera and just left and right 2-channel sound from the board. Suggestion.
Richard, you're going really bare bones there. Really, really bare bones there. The question is, where are you streaming it to? I think that's really the key question. Carl, what's your thought?
So the thing is, you want maximum exposure for the band. So YouTube is, so just you can set up an iPhone, give the iPhone a power source, make sure you have a good internet connection. So iPhone will be the start as far as the camera is concerned. As far as audio, this is kind of where like an A10 Mini or a Rodecaster, Rodecaster Video. So this is where these products come into real handy if you just need a simple setup. As I said, you can use a Blackmagic app on an iPhone, have the iPhone HDMI out into anything really that can actually stream to YouTube. But you want YouTube because YouTube is accessible, accessible to many people, as many places. It's easy discovery, so YouTube is good. And YouTube has relatively good quality as far as if someone has a low bandwidth, YouTube does good at handling lowering the resolution rather than just cutting them off, and so they can't see the show. So my strong suggestion would be keep a simple setup using like an A10 Mini Pro or something like that, nothing too expensive. Having an HDMI camera come to that, or you can use the SDI version, of course. And then so you're saying you're having 2 channels. So you want 2 channels to be auxiliary out of the board if you can, and you can say, hey, this is a streaming mix. Can you do a mix of streaming? If that's not the case, then get yourself a nice stereo microphone, place it as close to the stage as possible, kind of central. So draw like an equilateral triangle from the stage and place it there if you can, hang it from the ceiling if you can, and that'll get you a good live sound like you're in the room. and then feed that directly again into the ATEM or however you're going to get it into. But an ATEM or a Rodecaster video, I think Rodecaster Physio S is a cheaper one. Just any device like that, a Roland streaming box as well, would be your best bet. And straight to YouTube.
So, Richard, I will say, and Leo's going to chime in here too. I will say that I would recommend for as lightweight as you're going, do not take a mix from the board. The mix from the board is going to be very dry. It's going to be very tuned for the room. Anybody who mixes in a small club or a bar or something, they're not qualified to do a video mix. So don't even ask them to do it. They're just, I'll tell you flat out, they're not going to do a good job. Even if they go, oh yeah, I do this all the time, they're not going to do a good job. I would do a stereo pair, and I've done a lot of recordings in bars and whatnot. I would do a stereo pair. I wouldn't necessarily say what Carl said, as close to the stage as possible, because you can get really close to the stage. What I would do is I would put it back a bit. I like to look for like balconies and stuff. I've mounted things on balconies. I get it roughly in line with the speakers, because that's going to be a pretty good feel, but not so close that it's all speakers. You definitely want to hear the room reverb. You want to hear the crowd. You want to hear the cheering. I think if you're just going to do something as simple as you're doing, you're better off doing something like that. Leo, what's your opinion?
So I'll take there's two areas that I'll touch on here really quickly. The first one is on the static camera. It's notoriously difficult to have a static camera in certain live environments, especially when people are jumping up and down. Your static camera doesn't stay very static for very long. So look around and look at ideas that you can have, particularly cameras which have got self-leveling and other areas that you can do. One of the things I've done in this is to use some of the DJI products, if you can get them in your country, so that you can actually mount it and then it'll keep the camera stable. The other single biggest problem you're going to have, and I would say this will be your number one problem, is getting that feed out. It will work perfectly in the tests. It will work perfectly until you get 150 people in that room, and that will be the end of your signal. And it happens every single time.
Yeah,
one
true.
of the devices I've got this because I'm on the road at the moment, and it looks weird to be carrying this on the road. And I was amazed I got it into the country.
I'm surprised we let you in the country with that thing.
I was really worried that I wasn't going to get in with this. But this is just amazing. I find it amazing because it enables me to have multiple signals out at a fairly reasonable price. And that's where you're going to have a lot of problems.
Tell us a bit more about what it is, Leo. You didn't mention what it actually is.
Okay, this is the GLI Net. It's their biggest guy. I think it's the biggest one that they do. The X. I've now got to look at it with my eyes. The XE3000, and it's the one with the battery. And this has 2 SIM cards. It also has the ability to connect to the wireless and to the cable in. And it's great. It actually is great. I found it to work in a lot of environments where I just wouldn't have got a signal.
Yeah, Richard, I would recommend you go to this venue prior to you doing your stream. Go when there's a big crowd, because you get, 150 people that are all like, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all the stuff. And Leo's right. It's just going to kill any connectivity that you had, Thursday afternoon when you swung by after work. So it's a serious thing when you put 100 cell phones, transmitters in a room, and a few of them. Courtney, your thoughts?
Yeah, when Leo brings that router through customs, he just declares it as a comb for his English sheepdog. It looks just like that. What you would use. Now, one thing I was going to suggest is that if you have a chance, if you have access to a lighting grid or something overhead to mount the camera on, mount it on a post and drop it down so it's about 6 feet above the crowd's head, because that'll get it off the floor, so that as Leah was mentioning, it's not going to be a static camera for very long if people are dancing or jumping up and down. But if it's hung from the ceiling, you have a better chance of it working and not having someone and not having it shaken to death. The other problem is when you give a crowd in there, a lot of idiots these days are holding up their iPad over their head to shoot the venue for themselves, and they're going to hold it up right in front of your camera, and so you'll have the whole live stream as viewed through somebody else's iPad. So bear that in mind, and like was said, have a wired connection for your camera to upstream, to hit your distribution point with, and if possible, do bonded cellular, because anything coming out of the local venue's pipe, unless it's got really high-speed fiber, may be overwhelmed by just everybody, doing FaceTime to their family back home.
So also I'll mention, I'm sorry, Richard, if you go on the YouTuber, go to my YouTube channel, Chris Fenwick, no space, and search for any content from a band called Zoo Station. And it was a Bay Area based, and yes, there's only one Bay in the world that we talk about, Bay Area based, U2 cover band. I recorded one of their shows and I posted it and I sent it to the band. And then I ended up doing a bunch of work with these guys, and they were really a gas to work with. It was really fun. They're really nice guys. But some of those are doing, the audio is exactly what I said. Stereo pair in the balcony, hung out. I took a gobo arm or something. I hung it out away from the crowd. And I think I was recording to a Zoom recorder, and then I synced. I wasn't streaming, but I synced it all up later. And I tell you, I part of the reason why I shot this band as much as I did, it was about 16 years ago. It was sort of the beginning of like the whole 5D Mark II revolution. And I was doing it to invite local camera people to come and shoot something that was inconsequential, because we weren't getting paid for it. We were just doing it for fun. And I was trying to get people accustomed to shooting with a DSLR, because, everybody hated shooting with it. So anyway, they were fun recordings, and I did a lot of bar audio just like that. Courtney, let's go to the next question.
Okie dokie. Next question comes in.
Wait, hold on. Guy's mad at me. Guy's throwing me.
There were two other people waiting in line there, and you jumped over them.
Hey, come on now.
Guy, do you want to answer the last question that we beat down? Go ahead.
So we didn't, because it says preferred live streaming platform. So to me, the platform is the output, the destination. So I was just going to add one more. And then when you skip me over, I was like, hey, bro, here it is. Cloudflare. Stream is one place where you can go, where in case you have Facebook saying, hey, we're killing your stream because that song is copyrighted, or YouTube does the same to you. Facebook is notorious for just completely shutting down a stream, not even giving you a fighting chance. They just, boop, you're just gone. So depending on what kind of music it is, you just want to be careful of having control. Vimeo might be better, but they also can do the same thing. So depending on, like some of the guys said, your bandwidth, you might want to try a bunch of them, meet your audience where they are. So Restream.io is a good place where you could just shoot up one lightweight stream and then push it out to 5 other platforms. If you, I don't know what your role is with the band, but some people like to just say, all right, let's push it out to Twitch, let's push it to Facebook, let's just go everywhere. But like the other guys have said, having multiple cameras is nice. Having the ability to put in a line input from the board, and then also have an on-camera mic and have another XLR in where you can then mix. So it's nice to have a good camera and not just something that doesn't have these pro audio features that give you the ability to turn it down. And then always try to get tone from the board ahead of time, because the worst is when they start playing and next thing you know, you're just overloading your preamps and you can't do anything about it. And so be there for mic checks and rehearsals, and hopefully those are some good tips.
Avoid the board at all costs is my Leo, your comment.
There's two things that come up on there. First, that Chris said, which is making sure that you've done that test before. please go to the event and an event at the same venue before. We've all done it. This is, you say you're going to do an event and the external things around you cause the problem. The second thing that the guy mentioned there about using the restream, this has actually saved my life a lot of times, particularly on low bandwidth venues, because restream will buffer what's coming out, so you've got that extra chance to capture and deliver to YouTube than it just being turned off straight away. There are some settings on YouTube though you have to make sure, and I can't remember exactly what it is, to say do not disconnect the minute you see my connection drop, so that it will actually keep the session running. You then have to turn it off at the end. That's the downside, so you have to turn it off at the end.
So I'll add just one more thing while Chris is playing this video from a live gig. There's also Blackmagic Cloud. So we now have the cloud router. The cloud router can do this as well. So you can bring in 4 cameras, but you only need to bring in 1. So you can bring in a maximum of 4 sources, cameras, whatever. But it can go out to a destination of your choice, and YouTube can be one of those. So, and this does exactly what Leo just said. It does a buffer. So if you lose your connection to YouTube, or YouTube shuts you down, for instance, you can still go out to other ones, because the router can go out to one destination like YouTube, but you can bring it down to your own computer, and then that computer can be set up to go to Facebook or wherever, or a different instance of YouTube. So let's see if they knocked out on 2 channels. But Blackmagic Cloud Router is another solution, which is it's not Restream, but it's new. That's all I can say. Just go to Blackmagic Cloud, read about it. But that can do a very good job, because that can go straight from the Blackmagic camera. So the Blackmagic, no other device. You just need Blackmagic camera. You point Blackmagic camera at the router, and that's it. It's done. So you don't need to have any other box in the middle. So now that's the simplest setup you can have, is Blackmagic camera on the iPhone or Android, and point it at Blackmagic router. That's it. All you need is a connection that can handle your, I think it's 1080. So it's going to be 1080, it's going to be the maximum, I believe. So as long as it can handle 1080, which nearly any connection can, and remember that it'll buffer in the phone, and it'll buffer again in Blackmagic Cloud, so you don't have to worry about dropouts too much, because it will just buffer anyway.
Keep in mind, we're a little over halfway through the show. I promise you next week will be better. Grant will be back, but we're really happy that Leo and all y'all are here tonight. Peter, I want to hear more from you. Courtney, let's hear the next question.
Okie dokie. Leo Mintel, who's here on the panel tonight on loan from Richmond, London, asks the question, will 2110 replace NDI in the houses of worship environment?
Leo?
So just to give a little bit of background, I've been through a number of technology wars, if that's the right term for it. When TCP/IP used to replace NetBEUI, we've actually seen lots and lots of things where we've come to standardization. And listening to what that Carl was saying earlier, and how the NDI isn't really a standard, but 2110 is. It makes me question where we are on the houses of worship, which is, there's a huge number out there. A lot of us cut our teeth in that environment. It's an environment that we're used to, and it's an environment that will change as installations change. And I'm just curious, really, do we see this? Do we see that 2110 is going to sit there and we're going to say, that's it, Dante and NDI are things that we are going to move away from?
Peter?
So we just went through this with my house of worship. 2 years ago, we went and strung Cat 6 everywhere in the church through channels to do this, but we use NDI. And the simple reason is cost.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the NDI that we use in our houses of worship, and frankly at our scouting events too that I'm part of. That software is free.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not going to pay a bunch of money, particularly having looked at the prices of the recent switching announcements from Blackmagic. Those costs are probably not something I'd want to inflict on a house of worship at this point.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that bothers me the most in this community is we are so quick to throw big dollar signs at every solution. And the bottom line is not everybody has that kind of money. Not everybody has that. And you have to remember that these monthly subscriptions, this endless barrage of monthly subscriptions that we've all grown so accustomed to are, they're starving us of our future. And I personally really want to get that point across. I really want to get that point across. I see it as I turned 64 in a couple of months. This is part of my charge for the younger generation. I want you to live a better life than I'm living. And I got to tell you, I've been immensely blessed. So get started early, start saving more, start investing. Don't be afraid. Ask questions. If you have any finance questions, by all means, reach out to me. I will gladly help you. I had a great conversation with Alexander a couple of weeks ago, and it was very enlightening. It was really. Or did we get you?
Nope.
Okay, let's move to the next question.
We had one more from Theo Mandel. Raised his hand once again. Perhaps
did we go over me?
You
again?
kind of we lost you for a second there, Chris. So you may have.
Chris, we lost you there.
Yeah, you
lost
slipped
me?
into the encoder.
Yes, we lost you.
The encoder.
Oh, okay. I was trying to throw it to the next question.
But we got to answer that question.
Leo has one more.
Okay.
Chime in.
Actually, I did say that, Leo. Trying. I think I got muted out when I said, Leo, do you have more you want to say?
I do want to say more, but I also want to hear a bit from Carl on this one, because he's also raised his hand. The bit on here, I mean, I do agree with you, Chris, that technology and the cost of these things. And yes, I feel at 2110 that we're at the beginning of that road. We may not be. I'm sure people will say, no, it's been around for a long time. Exactly. But we're beginning of the mass production of that road. And that is exactly the same way as when you were looking at the original stuff that we were saying, when PTZ cameras, when they started to come out years ago, they were really super expensive. And now they're in that price ball and they come down to the point that people can use them. And I'm just looking at some of this stuff and I'm looking at what is able to be delivered. My question really isn't will it replace? It's more, when will it replace? Because once you get standards and the standards are adopted, I can see the benefits. We all started with 10 megabyte hubs, and now we're on 1 gig and 2.5 gig switches. It's just when. That's really where I'm trying to work out.
I don't know who's next, so my software's not up to date.
May I go?
Yes, you may.
Well, Carl, we've skipped over a couple of times.
I'll get skipped over one more time, and then I'll kick it over to him. Here's a picture from the rack.
When is Grant back?
Yeah. Grant's watching, going, "What are you doing to my show?" Here's the booth at the Blackmagic NAB show.
Ruining the show, Grant.
So you can see here there's a Ethernet switch 360p, which is kind of the heart of the puzzle. Then they also have this IP converter 8x12G SFP, and I just happen to have the ability to take pictures of these screens, and they let me, so you could actually see some of the top end here, where you could see the input, the output, the setup, the 2110. You could see where you could select the receiver, the sender, the SDI output. So when is this all going to, be easy and cheap? I mean, look at that rack and look at this right here. This is actually a cheap piece. I think this is their cheapest one. This is $345 US. Blackmagic 2110 IP mini bidirect 12G SFP. That's a mouthful. So you could get into it for that. And here's an app which I don't think is public, but I snapped this picture from the booth. I think this is the NEP Trucks screen, which it's called Blackmagic Discovery. And in here, if we zoom in a bit, you can see that there's NMOS nodes, there's PTP locks. So there's something called a Grandmaster clock, which when Jonas and I were looking at them, the cheapest one that we found was like $2,000. So something's got to be a clock on the system for 2110. And then Blackmagic's made it easy with this whole NMOS announce with their infrastructure, but I don't know how the NMOS works as far as like versus an NDI discovery server running just on a simple, old computer, which is what I do here locally now. I just run a main and a backup discovery server. So I'm new to 2110 and trying to figure this all out, but it's interesting to get a couple of screenshots, and I did put these inside of our Discord in the NAB section to let people look through these at their leisure so that you can get an idea of what the NMOS registry is. Is that something that you're letting it do auto, or is it manual? Then there's 16 channels of audio. Then there's even ways that you can route some of that data, the ancillary data. Like, so if it comes in via one method, how does it come out on the other side with closed captioning, with time code, with tally, all that stuff, so they can bring it in one way and then spit it out in a different order on the other side. So there's a lot going on in the 2110 world.
Carl?
So my question to you, Leo, is if the person whose job it is to look after, is it a live stream or a record or an iMag or all three for a house of worship? What do they want to use? Do they want to use hardware? Do they want to use software in a computer? Do they want it to be almost automatic, So that's my question. So you need to really get to who's going to run it. Is it a volunteer? Is it a paid professional? Is it a large setup? Like American House of Worships have like essentially a broadcast center with paid employees. That's where 2110 would actually make some sense. But once you get down to like, no, this is just a House of Worship paying for themselves. They've already got cameras that have NDI, and we're currently switching inside of a box. What I mean by that is a computer. There is another way with cameras that already support NDI. I'd say the vast majority of cameras that already support that also support our other IP flavors, be it RTMP or SRT over a local network. So we're not talking about going out to the wide, we're not talking about internet, we're just talking about a local network via a switch. The same switch that can handle NDI essentially. But there is new hardware that does support that. So the cool thing about new hardware that supports essentially SRT or RTMP on the network is going to be the Extreme G2. So this is the killer feature of this, of this particular box, is the fact that it can support 8 streams of SRT or 8 streams of RTMP or a combination, or HDMI or a combination. So you can have 2 HDMIs coming in from a deck link out of a computer, or from Hyperdeck, or from a computer itself, and then you can have 6 streams or 4 streams of SRT. You can have SRT coming from anywhere else in the world coming into this, of course, or you can just have it local. So this does everything you're asking, and it does it with the cameras that already have NDI already installed, because most of them will stream at RTMP anyway. So this is the killer feature, and this is why Blackmagic made this device, and it's why people are really excited about this device. People who don't understand this device, that's okay. It's not for you if you want to work in a computer. This does not accept NDI, and that's one of the reasons why this device gets panned by a lot of people, because it's like, well, it does SRT and RTMP, but I spent all this money, extra $500 on these cameras that do NDI. I paid this, maybe between $100 to $500. And so that can be the issue, is that people have spent that kind of money and they want to use the NDI. They're seeing they paid the license for NDI on their camera, on their PTZ camera, and they want to use it, rather than going, I'm just going to use the SRT or the RTMP that's built in the camera. The same quality, essentially. There's not going to be different quality. It's H.264, or with SRT, it could be H.265, of course. But the beauty of that is you actually have hardware, and the hardware can be reset. Now, you can do the same with the computer, but if the computer crashes, that's one thing. And you can actually run both. So you can have vMix subscribe to the SRT and RTP streams, and you can have the Extreme G2, and they could do different things. So one could actually stream to a wider, out to the internet, which maybe vMix could do that. You can do all your super sources, but yet the Extreme can actually work as the iMag. So for all the screens in the house of worship, for out in the other rooms that you're sending to, and for an iMag in the room, then you could use actually the Extreme G2 to do that, all from the same streams. Because remember, it's just SRT on a network, and both vMix and the Extreme G2 can listen to both. They can both receive it. There's no problem. So this is the beauty of it. And this is it's not 2110. I say once you go over 8 inputs or 8 sources, yes, this is where this ends, because this will only accept 8 total, regardless of what flavor the source is. So once you go over 8, then you're looking at a larger switcher, like a 2ME with 20 inputs, so on and so forth. The 2110 is distributed routing. So as Guy said, once you get it to like a larger house of worship and you want to do some more crazy stuff and you have, then yeah, definitely 2110 looks good, but you are going to have to spend some serious money compared to a house of worship that's already invested.
Okay, on that. Courtney, let's move to the next question.
All right, coming in from the Pacific Northwest in Tacoma, Washington, Richard Wells wants to know, are any of the panelists regularly viewing 360-degree or VR media? If so, what or where? If no, why not?
What are you doing, Courtney?
Well, I can answer the if no, why not?
Okay, go.
I worked for a few years ago, I worked on a number of virtual reality productions, including this one with Buzz Aldrin called Bike Pathways to Mars or something like that, where we captured Buzz in basically in volumetric video with a company called, I think it was called 8i. They are now since out of business. And so I got a chance to put on the goggles at the company where we did this volumetric video and look at several of these videos that the company has produced that were dramatic videos to demonstrate the VR. This is VR, not augmented reality. So this is virtual reality. And the problem with it is, besides having to wear the headset the entire time, is that you have to take certain audio cues and the viewer doesn't know where to look. Since you've got 360-degree video, you have to attract the person's head to the position where they can see what you want them to look at. And that was the major problem that I saw with this whole problem of VR video, is that you had to use directional audio cues, like you hear something coming up behind you, so you turn around and look to see. If you're not smart enough to turn your head toward the direction of the sound, you'll miss it completely because
What year was
turn your head.
What year was that, Courtney? What year did you work on that thing with Buzz?
I don't know, probably about 5 years ago, 6 years ago.
Okay.
And it was a tricky. I ran the teleprompter for him, and it was tricky because in that studio, they have all these cameras, they're surrounding you with like 54 cameras that are all recording simultaneously. And so you have to make the teleprompter invisible because the cameras are going to see it in one of the cameras. And so we had to mask it all off with green screen material, and the teleprompter screen had to be green on green. So green text on a green background.
Made it easy to read.
So so Buzz could read it, but enough contrast to be able to read it, but a little enough contrast to be able to key it out in the to generate the virtual video. But the problem is that company. I did a bunch of programs for that company. A lot of them, first it started out with entertainment stuff and videos, educational videos like that. And then they went to really corporate type videos like training guides for, they had a contract with some company back in the Midwest to do training films for linemen that are going up in the bucket and, working with high voltage lines. Why they had to do that in 3-dimensional video?
Stupid.
I don't know. Well, after about 6 months of that contract expiring, that company went out of business and they closed. So that's why I don't see a big future in 360 virtual reality, and augmented reality is just as crazy because, like, if you have the Vision Pro and you get used to your work area where you're pasting things on physical walls in your area and it's remembering where everything is, it's like, well, see, where did I leave my email? Did I leave it in the bathroom when I was doing my email? I got to walk around the house to figure out where I left stuff. It's kind of dumb. That's why I don't see it ever taking off as a mainstream product. It has a great wow factor. You get to see Buzz on the surface of Mars, but
He wasn't there though, right?
No, he was there.
Okay. He was on Mars.
What? No, he wasn't on Mars. No, he was in a green screen.
Just wanted to double check.
His son. It was an interesting guy too.
Give us the other side of this story.
That's funny because I remember when the HoloLens first came out, I ordered 2 of those things and they were super expensive. They're like $3,000 a whack. And it was all because my friend at Microsoft was like, hey, we just got these pictures of the moon or of Mars. This was 2016. And we were looking at them on the new HoloLens. And I was like, what's a HoloLens? And he was telling me about it. And so I had to get the latest tech. And nowadays, when I see the Apple Vision Pro and I look at NAB at the trade show floor and I see this monster, coming out with 100 gig Ethernet or 100 gig fiber coming out and going down into that fancy new Sonnet Thunderbolt 5 dock. And then here they had, there you go, there's the new Thunderbolt 5 enclosure with 2 of the IP DeckLink cards that do 100G. And then they had the Vision Pro. And you could just walk right up and put the thing on. And so I threw it on and got to look around and see what, a $30,000 camera with a $4,000 headset, with a $2,000 capture card, with a $1,200 Thunderbolt box going into a $9,000 computer can do. 8K per eye, ProRes, uncompressed. It's pretty impressive. When will it come to everybody? I don't know, but
never.
Never. I wound up selling my Meta Quest, but the Quest
People
has
don't want to mess up their hair. They don't want to mess up their hair. I'm serious. That's a thing. I'm serious. Leo, what's your thought on this? And then I don't want to talk about 360.
This question is about media. When we'll see it in media. And that to me is not where I see this happening. Where I see this happening is I see it being used for environments like medical. I see it used for environments where people have to go to actually see in hazardous environments, go in there to look at what you can't get there, and real time and live. For media, the whole objective of media is to put something in front of somebody and to focus their entertainment and focus their mind. And for that, you want them to look at where you tell them to look. The minute they can start looking over there, they've lost focus, and you want to keep that off. So I do see a huge area that I see 360 working, etc., but I don't see it in media.
I'm glad you're here, Leo. That's a good insight. Courtney, let's read the last question.
All right. Last one comes in from Richard Wells in Tacoma, Washington. Recommended layouts for someone who might be traveling through NOAA Purifoy Outdoor Desert Museum area with some gear. How to use that GLXE 3000 in it, maybe, perhaps.
Well, I'm glad Leo's here to answer this. Go, Leo.
Okay, so I don't know the NOAA Purifoy Outdoor Desert Museum, but I'll explain how I use this on the road. So I was in Morocco, and what I'm able to do, the big key thing is you can see it's pretty obvious. It has a lot of aerials. And when you're trying to get a 4G or 5G signal, that is the key difference. Also, because 2 of those aerials, those 2 in the middle, are actually your own Wi-Fi. If it's connecting to the Wi-Fi in the room, so if you're in a hotel room, it picks up the Wi-Fi stronger than your phone will ever pick it up. And then it just gives you it piggybacks, so you end up talking to that. So it's a great device to enable you to be able to connect to other networks. The other thing I really like about it is it has a cloud-based system in there called Good something, I can't remember what it's called, which means that as soon as it connects on, I get an email to say your device is connected on. I can then remote connect. So if I've got my other guys, we've got it, we can connect on, and I can then make the changes and the settings to connect them together. So it's really useful for that. We've actually gone and built into our cases for our ATEMs on our mixers that we've actually got a mini version of this in there, so that we can actually just, as soon as they land in a location, turn it on, we can actually then connect on and connect them to the network that they need to be, or change their settings so we can actually use them. That's how we use them.
Very cool. That brings us to the end of our questions from the rest of the world. And we will wrap up here with what Grant likes to call our content suggestions. So, Carl, what are you watching recently that you want to share with everybody else?
So this one is a little bit interesting. I mentioned it in our little pre-show that this is actually happening. So what it is, it's the Beatles. So this is a Beatles YouTube channel, and this is something I have never seen before on YouTube. So what I'm talking about is the fact that the Beatles, now if you take a look carefully, you'll notice that there is this thing called Station. So what it is, it's obviously the official videos from the Beatles, and some of these are more modern videos, some of the original videos made back for them. So a good example would be like Hey Bulldog and those type of things, which are original videos made back in the 60s. And this is just a 24/7, technically it's really a live stream, but it's, as you can see, it's labeled a station in YouTube, and it is literally just YouTube playing Beatles, well, actually technically the Beatles channel, playing Beatles songs 24/7. The really interesting feature that you may not think of is that the chat is just simply people singing along, and depending on what time of day it is, they'll sing along in different languages. So they are literally just, they're typing in the next line that's coming up or the line that's just about to happen, hitting enter because they're singing along in chat. But depending on the time of the day, it may be in Spanish, it may be in Cambodian, but everyone is just singing along in the chat. Now, of course, the chat can be a little bit unruly, but there is obviously there's some AI moderation going on, so it doesn't seem to be too unruly. But it's hilarious to see the chat just singing along to the song, or to some people just having a recollection, if they're old enough, of actually seeing the Beatles, which does happen in the chat. You'll see people in the chat just saying, I remember seeing them at this place, when I was a teenager. And so it is kind of interesting, and that tells you who is actually watching this, how old these people are, some of these people watching this in YouTube. But yeah, the chat is an interesting feature. Depending on time of day, if people are asleep, then you may have less, but it is in different languages. Everything that's sung, they haven't done any German. There are some German Beatles songs, of course, but they haven't done any German Beatles songs yet on the channel that I've seen. But if you just want to listen, and it's random, so you never know what song's going to come up. So if you literally want to have Beatles on shuffle, 200 songs plus, this is a great way to do it. And it's on YouTube. So in theory, if you have access to YouTube at work, then you can listen to Beatles all day at work. So that's one way of looking at it.
Guy, your content pick.
Yeah, in that same generation, I'm going to go throw it way back as well. This is a movie called A Complete Unknown, and it is a story of Bob Dylan. I was watching it on the plane, and things like this where, you normally start, if you're shooting film, you start looking at like, how does the light come down and how are those shadows over there appearing? Are they correct? And then you start to look at the latitude of like his face there, and that's like crazy that you're getting this window that has this exposure, and then you're getting these kind of shadow areas over here. And sometimes I'm just picking. Oh, sorry, I didn't have my telestrator on. I'm just picking apart all this stuff, going, technically this is why I love this film, is because they lit it this certain way. But this movie, I just fell in love with the story. I mean, it was so great. I watched half of it on the plane, that I had to buy it right when I got onto the train. And I was like, all right, I'm going to finish watching it on the train because it was just so good. So that's my content pick, is A Complete Unknown, the Bob Dylan story, because it's a fascinating one.
Courtney, your pick.
Staying in the musical genre, as we were talking earlier about cover bands, there's a good YouTube channel, if you're of a certain age, is the Middle Aged Dad Jam Band, which is a jam band that records in a little garage over in, well, I don't know if they actually record there, but they shoot their videos in a little garage over in Silver Lake. And they are incredibly good as a cover band. The singer can nail a number of different artists. Occasionally, Weird Al Yankovic will show up and play accordion. They have guest musicians show up in the garage every now and then. But they cover a lot of Billy Joel. They cover Grease. They cover 80s music and 90s music. So give them a listen. They sound incredibly good. They're incredibly well mixed. They're incredibly good musicians, and do some great cover work, and it's amusing and entertainment. They shoot the videos to playback, which they did in one of their answers questions, because it sounds way too good to be mixed in a garage, whereas where they shoot the videos. But they must record in the studio and shoot the video in their garage. But Middle Aged Dad Jam Band.
Yeah, I think I've stumbled across that. It's quite entertaining. Leo, your pick?
As it's my first time on the show, I'm going to do two things, which I know I'm not supposed to do. I know I'm going to do. I know. So the first is
the schedule
the
out
Life
of the
of
water.
Chuck. The Life of Chuck film, which I'm sure most have seen, it is really good. The way it comes together, it's just great. I'm not going to spoil it, but it's a great film. The other thing of a content suggestion is to meet people. That's why I'm out here. Some people, I go to the Bay Area and they drive 100 miles away, so they don't even bother meeting me. I don't know who that could be, Chris. Some don't even come down from Seattle, but it's been great to actually meet people out here. This is part of this community which I never knew about 6, 7, 8 years ago, and it's part of this community why I'm in it. And I would say anybody who's there, the community, when you meet people in real life, I met all the guys from eCam a week ago. It's just amazing. And I would say if you're going to put some content in your life, meet people.
That's great. Very touching. And I apologize for having a schedule that I had to adhere to. My contact pick is, and Carl will agree with me, it's race week. There's going to be another race this week. F1.
Miami.
F1 on your Apple TV. Check it out. You can set up a quad split. You can watch everything you want. You can bounce the audio around. It's super fun, super cool. Carl, I don't know if you heard me say this, but I've decided I need 3 TVs and 3 Apple TVs in order to properly watch F1 like a true fan. We've gotten to the end of the show.
Amazing because the rest of the world knew about F1 forever.
I know, and I just learned about it literally 6 months ago. Okay,
so I want to add one thing to what Chris is saying. From Miami onwards, there's going to be a handful of races where Apple will be streaming into cinemas. Yeah, so this is something that the Office Hours community knows. So this is the first race where that will be happening that Apple has arranged. So check the listings near you, and they're into a lot of cities, only in the United States. But in a lot of cities in the United States, Apple has set up live streams of certain races. Miami is the first, and they're going to be live streaming into the cinema. So take a look at local cinema and see if you have a F1 live stream for Miami.
You're right, though, Leo. It's ridiculous that America is just learning about F1. And not all of America. I'm very, very, very late to the game.
Unless your name's Andretti, then yes, F1 in America. Only Andretti's know about F1.
So anyway, this has been episode 2225. And if you were to enter all this stuff into the Talala computing box, it would tell you that we have traveled 14,000 miles this evening virtually. It's 23,000 kilometers. 111 million SM58s or bananas. They're almost interchangeable for scale. Thank you to the crew, Robert, Alan, Peter, Taylor, all the hard work you guys do. And we will be, promise you, actually, I can't promise you. I'm going to highly encourage you to come back next week. I think Grant's going to be back. It'll be a much better show. Talk to you later.
Yeah, I've moved on to F3.5.
Have you now?
It technically exists too.
Yes.